Okay, let's talk about the circular flow of economics. Basically, this explains how money circulates or flows in our economy. We call it the circular flow because it does end up looking similar to a circle. It's more oval shaped, but you'll get the point. So, most of this is common sense. It's just putting it down on paper so that you can use it to study and have the appropriate way to express how money flows in the United States. So, you have four sectors. We've got households, government, business firms, and banks. Households represents people, individuals like you and me. Business firms, of course, represents businesses and companies. And then the government and banks are pretty self-explanatory. So let's talk about how money circulates between these four sectors. Right, so households to businesses, we know that households give businesses money. And when I go to like Target or the grocery store or Ann Taylor Loft and I give them money, I expect to get goods or services in exchange. So that's one way that money circulates. Now, the more money that households are spending in businesses, the more goods and services they're getting, the more money businesses will have, and therefore the more people they'll be able to hire. Because we know that households also go to business firms, not just to buy stuff, but to work, to provide labor. In exchange for that labor, they get wages and salary. So the more money that is spent in businesses, the more wages and salary that could be paid. The more wages and salary that are paid, the more money people can spend at businesses. So you can see that the money will circulate, and that's a good thing. Let's transition to the government. We know that households pay taxes to the government as well as businesses. So they both pay taxes to the government. And why do we do that? That's because the government will give us services in exchange. We pay tax money, and therefore we have schools and roads and military service and that kind of thing. Same thing for businesses. So Target is going to pay the government taxes, and they're going to get services too. There is a road that leads to Target thanks to the government, and so the business firms can benefit from that as well. All right, then you throw banks into the picture, which we learned about in Unit 8. So we know that households provide money, they deposit their money into the bank, and they do that because they can earn APR. Businesses do the same thing. So the money that Target earns or the restaurants you go to earn, they take that money, they don't leave it at the store, they go and deposit it at the bank. And they do that so that they can get APR. And same thing for people. So we go to the bank and we deposit our money so we can earn interest on it. Also, don't forget that banks will loan out money, and because of that money they loan out, households have to pay the banks back interest. So there's two things going on this bottom layer. And same thing to the businesses. If a business wants to build a new building or take out a loan in order to pay off debt, or maybe take out a loan so that it can research and develop more products, they might ask the bank for a loan, but they know they're going to have to pay that loan back with APR. So this shows how money circulates in the U.S. economy, and that is the circular flow of economics. Now, on the flip side, this is just representing the U.S. economy. We have a whole world and global economy out there. So I threw in this fifth sector, which is the foreign sector, okay? Other countries. So this circular flow is happening in all countries. And we know that countries are exchanging products and money with each other. So money that is coming into our country and leaving our country has certain names, where the goods that we're getting in exchange have certain names. Now remember that this is coming in and out of the whole thing. So it looks like these arrows might be coming out of the bank and business arrows, but that's not true. It's coming out of the entire circular flow. We know that when our government, or our country rather, sends goods overseas, those are called exports. And in exchange for exports, other countries send us money. Okay, they don't send us imports. It's not like we export, for example, cotton, and in exchange get like a Toyota Camry. I don't think that's going to fly over so well. So when we export cotton, we're receiving money in exchange for that cotton. In the meantime, we also import goods into our country, so this is coming into our circular flow. And when that happens, a little bit of our money, or maybe a lot of our money, is leaving our circular flow, and it's going overseas to foreign sectors. So what happens is we want our exports to be greater so other countries have more money coming into our country. So this amount of money is going to be great, and that way it will feed into our circular flow. And what we don't want to happen necessarily is to have a trade deficit, which is when we are sending more money out of our economy into other people's economy, which is taking it away. So all of these things, I want you to write, all of these sectors are interdependent. Please write the word interdependent. We know that inter means between, like interstate and international, and dependent means that you rely on something else. So the households are dependent on the government and the banks and the business firms, and the business firms are dependent on each of these, the government's dependent on each of these. If one of these sectors fails, then all of them will fail. Take, for example, if the banks start to fail, they are not able to loan out money and they're not able to pay interest. Now, if households can't get loans and they can't get interest, that means they're paying the government less money in taxes. Well, if the government has less money in taxes, it's going to provide less services. And remember, if the bank's not loaning out money and we're not earning interest, then households aren't going to have as much money to spend in businesses. If the businesses don't have as much money, okay, because they're not getting loans and households aren't paying for as many goods, then businesses also aren't going to be able to pay as much in taxes. So therefore, services for businesses will dwindle as well. If the business is not thriving and booming, then it's not going to be able to pay its employees as much, or it won't be able to pay as many employees. So again, the households start to shrink. Okay, so that's just by taking banks out of the equation. Okay, let's say that we take, for example, the businesses out of the equation. Well, if households aren't buying goods and they're not getting goods and services, and then they're not getting wages, if they have less wages, then they're going to pay less in taxes. They're going to be able to deposit less into the bank, which means the bank's not going to be able to loan out as much money to other households and other businesses. And you can see how if one of these sectors starts doing poorly, then they all will start doing poorly, which is why it's important that we don't send so much money overseas and import so many goods. When our money comes out of this circular flow and into other countries' circular flow in the foreign sector, then this starts to shrink. What we want to happen is the opposite, where other countries are sending us all their money and we're exporting a lot of stuff. And when more and more money is coming into our circular flow, then all of this will be able to grow and to strengthen. And that is what it means when we say it is interdependent.